Three, two, one. Here we go. Are we ready?
And we're live. Hello, hello.
We're live. We're
We
here
sure
again.
are. Fifth episode. First one of
No way.
2022. And look at us. We even have a guest.
Happy 2022. I guess.
hmm
Yeah, I know. We have a guest. Can you
we
believe
have a
it?
guest. I guess we'll
There's
introduce
a
him
guest here.
first.
I'm actually
I don't
excited
know
for this
why
one.
he wanted to come on here, honestly. But
Yeah,
here he
talking
is.
about that, we haven't finalized the terms of my contract. The cash settlement is still to
Oh,
be
buddy.
determined.
If anything, you have to pay us for all this airtime
Huh?
we're giving you. Yeah, it's like running a commercial. The network
What
doesn't
for the
pay
UK?
you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
advertising the UK.
I will. I'll openly advertise the UK. Never even been there. I still know it's better. But welcome everybody. Babbling over borders. I'm Drake.
I'm Anthony, and this
This
is
is
David.
David. How you
This is
doing?
David.
This is David.
He is from the UK, England. What do you call it? Let's start there. What do you? Because I know I just learned actually, literally 4 days ago, that the United Kingdom is not just England. Scotland is just
Wow.
there. It's just chilling.
I
Like
think that's not
nobody
just
taught,
Scotland, right?
bro. Nobody talks about Scotland. Let's be honest. So it's
You know it's
just
not just England and Scotland either, right?
who else? Okay, there's some islands I know of, right? But those are the two. Like,
There is a country called Ireland.
wait, is Ireland also in the UK?
Yeah,
Oh
Wales.
Lord, buddy.
It's the
See,
United Kingdom.
I just thought the UK was a different name for England.
Oh my goodness,
Bro,
Drake.
you have
Well, I'm
England, you
glad
have
you're
Great
learning.
Britain. There's 1,000 names. They just call it whatever.
Th-
So I just assumed the UK was just tossed in the list, whatever.
This is
You
part
know,
of doing the podcast, right? We're learning. We're learning.
This is the over borders part. I don't know. I got the right flag though, right? Pretty sure.
I hope
what the
so. I
Union
hope you
Jack?
got the right flag.
Yeah, you got it.
There we
Unless
go.
it's a really condensed version of the Australian flag, 'cause I think they still have our colours.
No, it's definitely UK. So is there a UK flag, or
Yeah,
is
that
it?
one, the Union Jack.
So is there an England flag specifically?
Yeah, dude. Wow.
Is it the
Okay, I didn't
same
realize the
one? I
basis
don't,
in this up.
bro. I
I
don't
think
know that much.
initially the flag of the United Kingdom was actually comprised of the flags from other countries. So
hmm
the English flag is a red cross on a white background. So that's the middle of the Union Jack. And then the Scottish flag is a blue background with a white cross going diagonal corner to corner. So if you overlay that over the English flag, you start
hmm
to see the Union Jack.
See, that's crazy. I mean, I knew where Scotland and Ireland was, like geographically. I knew they were there. I just didn't know the name United Kingdom comprised of all of the countries.
Yeah, I think a lot of it depends on who you're talking to at the time and what context. So,
See,
if you're talking
that
about,
makes even less sense.
no, because I mean, if you're talking about legislation that affects just England as a country or legislation that
hmm
affects the UK as a whole, and someone's talking about it, you'll say, oh, yeah, in the UK, we do X, Y, and Z.
So I'm assuming it's very similar, though, right? Like legislation that passes
For the most part, yeah.
is okay. That makes sense.
Yeah,
What about
that's
your?
what I was
Because
gonna ask. I would be curious. Like, are the laws different for England specifically versus, say, Ireland and Scotland? Though.
this is where I show my ignorance. I don't know.
Okay.
As part
Okay.
of like some of the elections and stuff, there's things about the Scottish claiming their independence.
hmm
So they had referendums and stuff about claiming their independence from England in terms of legislation and dealings with Parliament and stuff like that. From memory, it didn't pass, so I think they're still connected to us in some way, shape, or form. But I don't think they're truly following every letter of the law we have here. But they're not
Do you
completely
know
independent
about
either.
the governing body? Are there different governing bodies over
I know there's a crazy
Scotland or
woman in
Ireland?
Scotland.
Like
She's,
running Scotland?
I mean, pretty much, yeah.
Okay.
She's a beast though, and she actually makes a lot of sense from what I've seen
Hmm.
of her. But I barely pay attention to our politics, let alone Scottish politics.
Oh, I feel that. All the
You
attention's
don't
on the
pay
U.S.
attention to
politics. What do you
politics.
mean?
I see. This is the thing we were talking about earlier. I don't know if I'm a typical Brit in my approach to politics, or if this is just me being a complete dumbass, or if everybody feels like this. But the reality is, when it comes time to vote, you look at the main runners, the main parties, you look at their key principles from their manifesto, and you pick. You vote for what you want to see, and then you know. I don't know anybody personally that reads every line of a manifesto from all major parties in any given election. That's just too much.
Yeah.
Like if people are out earning a lot of money and buying houses and stuff, they'll probably vote for the dude with the lowest taxes and you know not the guy that's voting to raise income tax or capital gains tax from property sales and stuff. But beyond that, I don't think many people go into the minutiae of the
Do you
details.
get told to like vote for a certain party when you're a young age? Like, is there like certain families that vote for only one party? Like,
That
this
is a
is the
good
party that
question.
we're
Yeah.
voting for. Like, obviously in the U.S. it's red or blue, right? Those are
Hmm.
this is who we're voting for, and you cannot vote for any other color. No way, right? I'm curious. Do you guys have the same thing? Because we do here in Canada. Like, it is
Certainly not my
basically
fucking family. But again, this is where I don't know if it's just me personally and my experience, or if it's the majority of the population, or if we're outsiders. But to be perfectly honest, in my family, it was treated like religion. As soon as you get old enough to understand it, you can make up your own damn mind. I'm
That makes
sure there will be
sense.
some parties that are or more, some families that are more heavily invested in the political agenda that probably, like if you've got an MP for a party and they raise their daughter up and all of a sudden their daughter votes for the other party, that's not going to play very well in the press.
Hmm.
So I'm sure she's had a bit of persuasion, but if
Do you
if I'm a typical
see
family, then no.
do you see religion playing a big factor in politics there?
Hmm. No. I mean, again, don't pay attention to all of it. Um, but
Yeah, but just like people you know
it's
or whatnot.
it's one of those things where the UK is typically open-minded about, we've got so many different people here from different backgrounds, religions, ethnicities, all that kind of stuff. It's a free for all, not in a violent way,
Yeah.
but most people, most decent people just say, hey man, do what you want to do. And a lot of stuff's protected under law about discrimination and stuff like that. So you still get the odd flare up on the news and things like that, but
See, we have a
it's
lot of religious
it's different.
divide here politically, at least, especially where I am. I mean, it's all over the states, right? But I live in the South, the Bible Belt, right? So it's super prevalent here, where if you claim to be a Christian, I would say 80% of people vote based on their religion here,
Really?
roughly. Yeah, it's pretty high. I would say, well, 80% of conservatives. I don't think as many left wing people vote based on religion because it wouldn't make as much sense, right?
Wait, so
based
But
off religion.
you saying
yes, so
religion
okay,
informs the decision, or say
yes,
80% of
100%. A lot
Christians
of
vote
people.
the
So
same
let's
way?
say like abortion laws. This is a
Hmm.
long rabbit hole, right? But that's a big one here is abortion laws. So people, since they view abortion as very wrong biblically, right? They vote right every time because of it could be that's the driving factor of a lot of people, right? They're so adamantly against
Do you think that's
abortion in that
causal?
example.
Do you think that's causal in terms of the religion made the party make the decision, which in turn got the voters, or do you think those people just think alike?
I think people draw their beliefs from the Bible, and I
The
think
voters or the runners?
the voters,
Right.
and I think the people, I would assume that the people running would some level of pandering, right? But a lot of people are also raised Christian, right? It's definitely the like predominant religion. So I would say in those households that are far right and religious, it's just kind of how you're raised, right? Like your parents are Christian, Baptist, what have you. Then you are, your grandparents are, right? But a lot of it, I think, does boil down to religion.
I mean, a lot of that is symptomatic of like just suppressing people's ability to make their own decision, though, isn't it? Whether it's political
Mm.
party, religion, belief,
Yeah.
like those. The impression I get from over here is in America, in certain households, in certain areas, you're told what to think about most things.
I
And if you
think
disagree with the family, you're basically shunned.
essentially, I mean, with some things, I would say most people say that they have obviously the freedom to vote how they want. And there are people that don't follow in their parents, grandparents' footsteps politically, religiously, right? But I think it boils down to if you're around it your entire life, and those are the factors that are persuading you with your decisions, then you might have a choice. But at the end of the day,
In
like,
air
do you
quotes.
really, right? Like, if you're
Yeah, but
only given
if
certain
that's how you
information.
grew up and that's all you know and that's all the people you surrounded yourself with and that's the only view of life, right? Like, you
Hmm.
know what I mean? I think there's a bigger picture there, right? When you start to see diversity and start to see people live differently, you're going to realize that maybe it isn't all this way and maybe everybody isn't the same. Right? Like,
Hmm.
I'm not very religious. I grew up around religious people. I know religious people. You know what I mean? And I just was never really one of them. And so I do think when you surround yourself in it and you get that's all like you know what I mean? When you're involved in that lifestyle, a lot of the time that's really all you know and all you surround yourself with because everybody else is no good if they're not going to church. So, I think that to see a different viewpoint and a different lifestyle is very different or harder for them, I guess. I don't know what the
Yeah, I think
correct
some
word
of
is
it's
there. Like,
also a lot more subtle, right? It's not necessarily always like, I mean, you definitely have a lot of, you shouldn't vote left, right? You never vote liberal. Conservatives the way it'll make America great again. Like you have that like rhetoric
For
that
the
is
record,
on
that
the
didn't work.
extreme though, right? Tell me about it. So you have that extreme, but you also have a lot of like more subtle views that are more like, they're not telling you, oh, you should hate liberals. They're telling you, oh, you have a choice, but this is what the Bible tells you should do. And since you've been going to church for the past 20
oh boy.
years, right? And it's stuff like that. So I think there's a lot of smaller social dynamic like issues. I think that's why you see a lot of like bigger cities with more people and more influence vote liberally as
Are
opposed
you in
to
a big
conservatively.
city, David? Just out of curiosity.
I'm outside one.
Okay.
So again, we'll get into some geographical technicalities here, but yeah, I'm about 15, 20 minutes outside of London city centre.
Okay. So yeah, big city. So yeah, I'm the same deal. About a little further, 40 minutes, half an hour to 40 minutes from Toronto. So, yeah, big city, crazy
But again,
busy.
my family wasn't particularly strict on anything, so yeah, you get to an age where you understand something, you make up your own mind. As long as it's legal, it's all good. That is the reality of it. We're very much
I
you
mean,
do
if you
you
look
kind
at
of people.
party lines, it's almost 50-50 every time, right? Almost every vote.
But
There's rarely, like, there's not a huge disproportionate number of either side of liberals or conservatives, right?
in the States, maybe
Yeah,
ours is a
yeah.
little more.
Yeah,
I think we
definitely
Do you
have
just
guys
two
have
main
here.
parties.
So,
how many parties do you have in England? I guess I should say, or do you like when you go to vote? Is it for the UK in general, or do you vote for like England specifically, or do you?
No, we vote for the English Prime Minister and
And
their
so you
party.
have an English prime minister, but don't you have the Queen over there? Like,
Yeah,
she's just there.
she's
She
his boss,
stays. They
but
don't vote.
she's like a silent partner. She gets the dude to run the day to day, and if he steps out of line, she should be checking him. But
What does she
I think
actually, what does that
no,
office
I the
actually like
reality of it
implement?
is, I think around the time they was sorting out the Brexit votes and stuff like that, Boris, the Prime Minister, did something he shouldn't have done, and I think he got pulled up in front of the Queen. I don't know what happened. I don't know what he did. I don't really care.
you don't look into that and find out like the Queen scolded him. Like, I want to see pictures of the Queen, like
What do
shaking
you
her
think they're
finger
gonna
at
find
someone.
out? If I read the article, it's only gonna be what the royal family's published. Like
Mhm.
they're
That's
hardly
very
gonna say, "Oh
They
yeah, the
probably
Queen
have one of the
dragged him
best
in the
PR
throne
teams
room,
in the world.
going to drop his pants and whooped his ass with a cane." Like they're not gonna tell you that, so why do I want to read it?
The good old
Well,
Like
British
yeah,
even
way of life.
I was gonna say there's definitely some interesting stories about the royal family that have been swirling around, on and off during the pandemic, and yeah, it's been I don't know, it seems to go away rather quickly, and you don't
see,
hear very much.
I'm absolutely not in any kind of position to lend any credence to any story you may or may not have heard. But the reality is, if you were a royal family member, do you think you'd be satisfied sitting here talking to me and Drake on a podcast at 1 a.m? I have a feeling your
Yeah.
interests would be a little grander than hey, let's make a podcast of us arguing with some foreigners. Do you know what I mean? Like, so
That
if
makes
you see a
sense. Yeah.
story about, I don't know, a prince bungee jumping out of a helicopter to attend a stag do or something, you got to think, like, as a normal human being,
Priorities,
you
right?
probably say that's a bit much. But then you got to think, hold on, if you were a rich royal, you might consider it.
How much do you think the royal family has to do with the swaying of politics? Do they openly
Mm,
discuss like political policies? Do they come out and
I
like
would have thought.
swing one side or the other, or
Yeah, uh, I
And I'm
think
curious,
they let the
what?
people vote, and then whoever's the PM gets, the Queen will talk to them and be like, "What's good?"
But they never
there's
do
a
like an endorsement or anything like that, or I
Oh,
don't know the
hey,
correct way to word it
the Queen don't come
precisely.
out and say I'm voting Labour or I'm voting whatever.
Okay.
Pretty sure she don't vote. Maybe she don't. I don't know. Why are you
Yeah,
asking these complicated questions? I
yeah.
don't know.
we need to know these things. You're supposed to know.
That's what
You're the
Wikipedia's for. Like, I'm a guy. I'm not Google.
I think the queen
okay.
having a
Now
queen
are
is
you?
interesting.
Yeah, are you allowed to talk bad about the royal family, or does that get you put in jail? Like, is that a big no? Like,
Where do
where
you
are
think
you
we
allowed?
live? Like, you can say whatever
I'm
you want.
In
I'm just
Thailand, I
asking a
learned that
question.
it is the same. I mean, obviously not the same setup, but they have a royal family. If you talk bad about the king there, they'll just throw you in jail. It's fine, whatever.
Yeah, we don't play that shit over here. You can say what you want. I mean, the reality, you can't, if you tried to start some malicious rumor that could, you know, tar the image of the royal family and conspiracy and all that stuff, someone would probably show up at your doorstep and say, cut that shit out. But the
Yeah.
reality is, not many people have that kind of power unless you run a newspaper.
We
Um,
had a conversation the other day, obviously off stream, about the royal family and like how British people feel about them. And you said it's pretty much
mm,
just neutral, right? More or less. It's not
I,
super
I don't,
for or against from
again,
your
this is one of
perspective.
those things of my personal opinion, and the people I know don't really care.
Hmm.
Some people like the royal family. It gives us a sense of identity. It gives us, well, to be honest, quite a lot of power in on the world stage, for negotiations and things like that. But um, it's one of
Yeah,
those
we
things
have
you
to
can't possibly know what our position would be without them. So it's hard to accredit where we are now to them or
Yeah.
against them. I think there are certainly some people that see it as a burden, because obviously there's a cost to running the
Yeah,
royal family
tax
and their residence
wise.
and stuff like that. But um, I think for the most part, enough people turn up for her birthday celebrations in London that they're probably okay with it.
Do you think her or the royal family in general, their like role of power and just influence? I mean, I don't know how strong the UK is, or England specifically is, without that. But do you think it would be where it is now without the royal family's influence?
No, I think the biggest one for me is when you see like all the massive media coverage and the importance of the elections in America every time when there's a president, whether it's a new one or the same one. And as
Hmm.
soon as they're sitting in the White House and they're all comfy, they always make the trip over to the UK to go see the Queen. Like whether it's a sign of respect or whatever, like they're always here.
Yeah.
And I don't think
Yeah,
if it was just our prime minister that, Trump would have got on a plane and come flying over to meet that idiot. Like, I just don't see it.
I don't think without that influence, I mean, from my view, well, I mean, obviously, this is a very small bubble that I'm in comparative to the whole world, but I would doubt that the UK would be considered like a global power without that influence. It would almost just be
Uh,
like any other. I would suggest, I mean, from my viewpoint, like how I obviously was taught and social around here, would be the UK probably, or Britain, stands out more than the rest of European countries, right? It's almost like a step above, like a
and
tier
that's the
up.
royal family. I agree with that.
And I think
I'll
without the
take that.
royal family and the past and the influence, it would probably be knocked down to
I don't know.
like another European country.
Potentially.
Like still
But like I
livable
said,
and
you
still
can't.
nice, but not a power, right?
You couldn't say that for certainty one way or the other, but I think there's going to be more than one level of power. There's more than one type of power. So, for example, they probably give us a significant advantage in, say, the political arena and
Mm-hmm.
negotiations of, the UN and stuff like that. But um, there's other stuff that comes out of the UK where they specialize, and it can go back years and years and years. So the Air Force, for example, during the World War was a huge military power, but from a
Mm.
very tiny island. So that gives you a different kind of power. And then I'm not sure if it's England that specializes in it, but we have architects, we have scientists that are prominent in their fields. So again, that's a different kind of power. Very small country, but I think relative to size, we've got a lot to offer.
For
Yeah,
sure.
but and okay, that leads us into a good point, because I will say the UK has done a very good job on some things, including public health, which they seem to right. I want to be very careful with my words here.
Go ahead, say it.
Seem to
It's
have
okay.
done a
It's
better
recording. It's
job,
live.
right, with public health and vaping in particular. And that's obviously how the three of us know each other and met. And they have a very, very different approach to vaping than Canada or the US. And obviously a lot of our rants and raves, right, have revolved around the topic of public health and all that. But yeah, I'm definitely curious. Like, why do you think that the UK, took the approach they did with vaping? I'm definitely.
I, I'm one of those people that believes our health service actually gives a shit whether we live or die. So I think there's that. They looked
Must be
into it. The
nice.
reality is
Yeah.
smoking will kill you. If you smoke at some point, it will kill you. Whether it's cancer or other associate, it will get you in the end. Um, but there is the financial element to it as well. We have state funded healthcare, and the cost of caring for people with cancer and smoking related illnesses is damn near bankrupting us. The shit's expensive.
Mhm.
Um, and so the more people that we get to stop smoking, the less people are in the hospitals, the less money we spend on their care, the more money we have left to, I don't know, fix the roads or improve the NHS or whatever, because it's all one big like local government pot of money. And if healthcare takes up so much of that, fighting cancer and other things like that, then there's less money to go around for, I don't know, education, road maintenance, libraries, all that kind of stuff.
So I have
How
a
much does a
question.
pack
Oh,
How
go
much
ahead.
does a pack of cigarettes cost? I'm curious.
As I don't smoke, I can't tell you, but I'm pretty sure it's north of £10 for a 20 pack.
Phew. God, that is
So that's got to
ridiculous
be like
compared to
15,
here.
16 bucks.
Yeah, that is crazy here.
And do you know how much of that is tax versus?
No.
No,
You know what I
Who would
mean?
know that?
unfortunately,
Yeah, that you'd have to
a
really.
large proportion of that would be tax.
No. So I have one question. Have you ever met anyone personally or even heard around, like, in the UK, people that are against public or universal health care? People who think it should be
Mm,
privatized. Is that a big debate there?
Usually around election season, because I think there's always the worry that a political party is going to get in and want to sell off bits of the NHS. But of course,
Uh,
when you sell it privately, all of a sudden profit becomes the motive, and you're dangerously close to being, like the states, and right now
yeah,
it's going to cost
yeah.
you a few thousand. Like, so I think when it comes to that kind of topic, a lot of people are pro NHS as being a state service, but I think there is also the argument that if you privatize it, there's more money involved, so the quality would be better. But then,
Mm-hmm.
in my mind, you'd end up paying for that quality. The NHS for someone like me who I'm asthmatic, I need an asthma inhaler. It costs me. It falls under a standard prescription cost. So there's a lot of medications and stuff that just count as a standard prescription, and it will cost £9, I think. So each time I need an inhaler, it costs £9.
Yeah. How much did you pay for
Whereas
inhalers before, Anthony?
Oh, I've paid. They're like $100 or something here in
So that's like,
Canada.
damn.
120 is like a regular one, if I'm not mistaken. The fancy ones get even more expensive. Yeah, £9 for a puffer. I'm not sure what that works out to Canadian, but I'm sure it's cheaper than
I
$100.
think
What's your
their
money?
rate is
$4 to an American
roughly.
dollar,
No,
or is it
it's not that
for
bad.
Canadian to a pound?
It might be the lad. No, I don't even think it's that bad. I think his is like 2 to 1, probably, roughly, to yours. So
I mean,
two Canadian is £1, roughly.
Google's a click away. What's your currency called? Canadian dollar?
Monopoly
Yeah,
money.
Canadian dollar. Yeah, the Canadian. But yeah. See, and you know what? Like I should be
It's
doing
1 to
like
172.
googling and
It's what?
1 to 172.
Okay, so yeah, right there.
yeah, $1.75. So still, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like
that's still very.
under $20. Incredible to
Yeah.
have a life-saving product. Like
Well, come
Mm-hmm.
down to America. See how it feels here.
I,
Good old
I would
state.
love
Hell
to
no.
know what an asthma inhaler costs in America.
Yeah,
We should
honestly, I
definitely.
wish I could tell you, but I'm not asthmatic, so I guess I'm grateful that I can't tell you. But I wouldn't know offhand.
That's
But
it, it's insane. I wouldn't even want to imagine if we're paying $100. Mind you, I've heard Canadians going down to the U.S. to get medications because it's cheaper in the U.S. than it is up here. Some medications, right?
I think, yeah, maybe some of them. I would say, I don't know. I would just going to the doctor, having tests done, things like that, you suffer a lot, right? So I
Do you
went
have
What?
and
to
You
pay
had,
go
for any
see a
of that?
GP? That costs you money?
oh, buddy. So I went, this was years ago now. It's probably more now, I'm sure, with inflation and everything. But a few years ago, I went and I had some blood work done and I had an x ray done. And the total came out to, with the, okay, another thing, they have a cash discount at the hospital I was at.
What's they do?
So if you pay with, obviously, if you have insurance, is one price. And if you pay with cash, it is substantially lower because they want to, pull all the money from insurance they can. But it cost me cash discount, and the cash discount is substantial. You're looking at like 90% off or something if it's cash. And it was like right around $800.
Damn.
Yeah.
I tell you what's funny. I've got a doctor's appointment in 2 weeks. They're going to do a blood draw, a whole battery of tests, and give me an ultrasound. And that's free.
No money. You're just good to go.
None was. I'm not even going to take my wallet out with me.
See, that's
You have to
crazy to
present
me.
like a health card or some sort of card to
No, it's
receive that care.
your national insurance number. So when you pay taxes, you pay towards national insurance. So the contribution is made for your state healthcare, and then after that, you get given a national health number. And when you sign up to a GP, you give them that number. They find out who you are.
No, I will say,
Actually,
obviously,
this
that price
touches
is
on that
super
legislation
deflated.
you were talking to me about. So you know that bill you posted me about the digital identification?
Yes.
So that's one of the background checks that would be included in that. To prove I'm eligible for state healthcare, I would be able to submit my NHS number electronically.
So that number though, is it on a card? Like how do you keep this
I think
number? Like
they used to be printed on a card, but I've got no idea where my card is. I mean, it's one of those things, like it's 2 letters and 6 numbers after, a few years of, because you have that number for life. It never changes. So it's like, if you have your ATM pin for long enough, you just remember it. It's not.
yeah, okay,
Yeah.
we have the same thing, a social insurance number, and I've memorized that.
Right.
I have
And
And
not
see,
memorized
yeah,
my
you're
health card number though. But yeah, mine's on a card. It's a number. I don't know. They scan it, and you get. Yeah, I'll get like a doctor's visit for free. I could probably get blood work for free, ultrasound for free. Like as long as the doctor ordered those things, those would be done for free. But prescriptions, any like aftermarket care, Cairo, physio, like all those things you end up having to pay for.
see,
Or
here's one
insurance
thing
will cover
too.
some of
See, that's my thing. So my numbers are obviously, I don't have insurance, like health insurance. So that number is obviously inflated to what I would pay if I did have health insurance. But health insurance is very expensive. For both my parents, just them to have health insurance is costing them upwards of like $300 a month for just those two people in that house. Now, that
so
seems like a
150
lot.
bucks a month.
We pay national insurance tax, but I'm pretty sure that's based off a percentage of your income.
See, and
Or
if
is that
they
just
worked
the
it
income
out
tax?
to a
I don't.
percentage of the income in that house, you're looking at a pretty hefty percentage. It would work
Yeah.
up to probably, I don't know, 10, 15% between there, maybe 12%, right? from what they're paying.
See,
If it were to translate to percentages like taxable income. But even they have to also pay on top of their insurance some stuff, right? So they're probably paying roughly what you would pay. I don't know, it depends. They have co-pays and all this. There's a lot of factors. Like after you hit your co-pay, then everything's covered with their specific insurance. But before
Apparently
that,
we
you pay like
pay
20% or something like that.
we pay. Wait, that can't be right. 2%. I don't know. It's a percentage, but you know there are some medications where that prescription cost I was talking about. There are some specialist medications that will cost more on
Mm-hmm.
even on a prescription, but um, you know, for
and
stuff
you have
like
to pay for
inhalers and whatever is low.
you pay for that out of pocket.
Yeah, you would do. I mean, there's all sorts of exemption criteria as well. So your employment status, your health status, all that kind of stuff. You can end up paying nothing even for expensive medication. Um,
I
but I
would be
haven't used
interested to see
expensive
the
medication,
tax
so I don't know
rate
what they cost.
breakdowns between the US and Canada and the UK to see
For what?
just the whole breakdown of how you're taxed. I mean, obviously, you have a higher tax rate, both of you, than I do here because of
Yes.
different social services that your countries offer. But I would be interested to see how much of it is going towards those social services or what you're paying for, right? And what percentage it is
Yeah.
compared to here. But I mean, that's a whole different, even talking between us three, what we're taxed at wouldn't even really be relevant because you have so many
What's
different
funny
tax
is
brackets, right? So,
a lot of, you know, I may never. I don't think I've ever been admitted to hospital, at least not seriously, to stay there for anything
mm,
critical. But part of my national insurance contribution will cover the cost of other people that need to stay in hospitals and stuff like that. So there's that sense of the social, you know, the social construct of, you know, looking after your society. And it's the same, you know, part of our taxes go to education, but not everybody is either in education or has children
mhm.
that use it. A large proportion of our taxes go to adult social care. You know, people with
Yeah.
mental and learning difficulties, health issues, stuff like that. But you know, there are 25-year-olds that haven't got a care in the world with that regards, but they still pay the tax. So
In
it's all
terms of
part of that.
education, I've heard so many different things about different countries. How is higher education handled financially in England?
Badly. Um, Again, when I went to university, it was well different to the way it is now, but it's expensive. Um, the way it used to be done, and the way I'm sure it is still to some extent, is the the local government would lend you money as a student loan to pay your
Mm-hmm.
tuition, and then as soon as you start earning, it's either 15,000 or 25,000 a year, they will start deducting a contribution to pay off that loan.
That's still better
Um,
than Canada.
That is
but what they'll
similar to
do,
here, roughly. I
what
don't know
they'll
the
do
exact
is
numbers.
they'll take a certain percentage of your income based on how much you're earning to pay back that loan. But if you haven't paid that back within 25 years, they write it off.
They just write
I
it
don't
off.
know about write-offs.
I'm
I don't know
pretty sure.
too much about the system here. I mean, obviously, I know we have to pay for college a lot. University, we have to pay a lot of money,
That
depending on where you go.
that's a
Some
good
places are
deal.
obviously very cheaper. Is that
Yeah.
also a thing there, where you can choose different colleges cost like vastly different amounts?
I don't know. I only went to one. I couldn't tell you.
Mhm. Was the one you
Again, I
went to?
didn't
Was it a
really
larger
pay.
university?
Mm, Again, didn't go see that many. Couldn't tell you.
Yeah. See, we have. I mean, it can range anywhere from like 1,500 a semester up to like 30, 40, $50,000 a year, right? It varies a
Ours
lot.
wasn't that much.
So I mean, it
In
just
the interest of
depends. I
full
mean,
disclosure, I bailed out after a year at uni, but I think I paid.
Uh-oh.
I got loans in the region of 2 to 3 thousand a term, so I probably owed
okay.
about 9, 10 grand, give or take, for a year. So if
Mhm.
you do that over 3 or 4 years, it could be 30, 40 grand. Got no
Yeah.
idea what it costs for anybody else. Got no idea what it costs now, but that
Yeah.
was the
What
ballpark
about
back then.
Canada? How's your
Oh,
education is similar, right?
yeah, it costs, and I guess it would be about that 3, 4 grand, depending on what course you're taking and what school you're going to. And we have the same kind of system though, like depending on what college or university you're going to. Mind you, a lot of them, there are like a lot of colleges are moving like cheaper, try and get it done quicker, you know what I mean? And not a lot of rigmarole. I do see a lot of that in Canada as well, or advertisements for them, I guess. I don't know
Hmm.
successful they are. You know what I mean? I don't know how that looks on an application versus going to an actual accredited college. I'm sure an accredited one would be a lot better, but yeah, we
Yeah.
have the same kind of deal here in Canada.
Okay.
Well, you know,
No,
the
that makes
funniest thing is
sense.
though, no, like if people say, "Oh, tuition fees are high" or whatever, that becomes the baseline. So when I went to university, there was a certain tax on cigarettes. There was, tuition fees of this, that, and the other, whatever party was in power at the time. Once that's done and established, you can bitch about it, but that's life. That's what you do. You make an informed decision when you sign up to university. This is what it costs. This is the repayment. This is how it works. What really pisses people off, particularly around election time, is when people want to change that. Like, if tuition
Hmm.
fees are high, people
Yeah.
will say, right, tuition fees are high. Do I want to go to university? Yes or no? And they make that conscious decision, is their decision to make. But if somebody comes along in the next election and says, right, I want to increase it by 30 grand a year, they get pissed off. Now, it's not necessarily about the amount it increases to, it's about the fact that it has increased.
Yeah. Do
See what I'm saying?
you
So
believe,
there's certain unrest about that.
do you personally believe that education should be subsidized by the government? Similarly to healthcare or whatever.
Because I work for local government, this is a difficult question for me to answer because I
Hmm.
am I am a
Hmm.
management accountant. I deal with government finances as my day job. Um, Morally, and as an individual, as a person, I would love to say yes, the government should subsidize education wherever possible because you're educating your nation to produce better outcomes in the long term for your local residents. So absolutely, it's important and it should be subsidized where it's possible. But working where I work, I know that's not possible. Yeah, if the problem is when you look at these organizations and you haven't worked there and you don't understand, is we get given a pot of money by central government and we have to make that money cover all the services we legally have to provide to residents. So that includes caring for the elderly, that includes collecting your trash like twice a week or whatever, that includes keeping your
Hmm.
streets clean, your libraries open, your parks clean. At some point, somebody has to make a decision that says, I can't pay for this because I'm paying for this. That's just the reality of it. There is a limited pot of money.
No, that
And
makes
that will be the
sense.
same at national level as well. I'm sure they'd love
Mhm.
to offer free education and healthcare to everybody all the time forever. But realistically, we know, I say we know, you guys should understand that that's not possible.
Yeah, of course. Like, I mean,
Did you guys
tax
print a
rates can
bunch
only
of
go
money?
so high.
Hold on.
Mhm.
Did you guys print a bunch of
Oh
money
God.
during the pandemic to make? I'm just curious
To do
to
what?
help fund services and
Pandemic
everything
relief,
else.
anything like that.
Yeah.
Are you talking
He's
about to residents and as an individual, did I get money? Is that like
he's
Trump
pretty
used
much
to have?
just asking about your inflation, like UK
Yeah. Did
inflation.
you guys print
Oh shit, I
money?
have no
So
idea.
like Canada printed, I don't know, billion some dollars or trillion some, like an absurd amount of money. Like it's a ridiculous amount, and just devalued our dollar basically by printing even more money. I was just curious, like,
I have no idea. I mean,
okay,
if that was a national response in a lot of places, it's possible it happened here, but I don't know.
okay.
I think a lot of
But
people
if that kind
overreact
of
about that, like
that's just
inflation
business
in
as usual.
general.
That's how
Right,
inflation and
yeah.
interest rates are managed by controlling your currency.
Did you guys get any sort of personal, like, stimulus type packages, something like that?
No, not
Government
the way you
giving
guys
you
did.
money?
We didn't. They didn't just give us cash. So there was a couple of initiatives that were put in place. So for workers that were laid off because of COVID, they funded a lot of industries and sectors with money to allow them to pay a certain percentage of their staffing bill. So, for example, if I worked in a shop and I was laid off and that industry was supported by this initiative, that shop would have been given money to pay me, say, 75% of my salary. or whatever it was.
Okay. Yeah.
Um,
But only certain industries got that.
I don't know. So basically, I can work remotely. So I was able to work from home. So
Hmm.
everybody stayed employed, and we just kept working and kept being paid. So it wasn't something that I looked too much into the detail of. The other thing was where companies like mine said you can now work from home. Obviously, there's a cost to me as an individual for heating, power in my house, and all that kind of stuff that I wouldn't have if I was at work. So they put some tax relief into the system. So basically, if I was working from home, I could apply for tax relief.
Hmm.
I don't think it was massive, but a couple of hundred quid. It was there and available.
Okay.
But we
See,
we
that's
didn't get like a check
interesting.
in the mail or
Yeah,
nothing.
we got tons. That is one thing the states did that was surprising, I would say, is
And that's
everything
the
financially changed. I mean,
stupidest
they gave
shit I've
us
ever seen in my life.
two stimulus checks that equaled maybe even three, two or three. We'll say roughly 2,000 in that. But even that was nothing compared to unemployment checks.
Hmm.
So normally your unemployment is very very low, right? I got laid off from my day job when it all started, and the unemployment I would have received was $110 per week. That is under the normal US unemployment law. That is the base amount, right? $110 a week, which is nothing, not even worth filing almost. But the government came in and they added $600 per week on top of that. So it was five times the initial, over five times, almost six times the initial amount I would have received extra. So instead of $100, I was pulling 700 per week from unemployment
Hmm.
after being laid off. It was more money than the job
You
that I
laid
was
off
working.
because of COVID?
Yes.
Right. See, in a way, that makes sense that they compensate you more because you lost the work due to the pandemic.
It was
Yeah,
just
but see,
substantially more. Like I didn't
yeah, but
expect it to be
if you're
that
gonna
much.
get paid more to sit at home, right? And I think that was the same problem we had here in Canada, is they started paying people more money than they were making on unemployment, right? So there was no initiative to go back to work. And
I'll
I
vouch for
think
that
it's
100%. After I got laid off, I made substantially more than I was
That's
making
why
at the
one of the
day job,
reasons it was just
right? So I
stupid.
was, why would I go get another job when I can pull $2,800 a month from the government, right? Like,
Do
what
you
do I
know
need?
from this side of the ocean looking at that, what really pissed me off, and I know it's none of my business, so I have no right to say that I'm irritated by it, but all over social media and on the news is people complaining that they couldn't find work or they were laid off work, so they couldn't feed their families, they couldn't clothe their kids, and
No, that makes no sense. I
then
don't understand why that would have happened. Unemployment
no,
was
but
the
then
easiest it's ever been to receive during that time.
all of a sudden, these stimulus checks come through, and people suddenly get two, three, four, $5,000, and they buy a TV, or
Hmm. And
they
you
buy
get
a
way
new
more with
couch.
kids. I quoted you the numbers for me at the time, what, 22, 23-year-old single male, right? But you start having kids in the midst. That one time they added like I think it was $600 per child. So I knew
Right.
people that were getting $6,000 after all, like their family, right?
Did they spend that on food, power, and clothes for their kids?
And they didn't need to because they also got the unemployment and
I
other
bet they got
stimulus.
plenty
It doesn't even
power out there
matter,
too.
right? Like,
yeah, but see, I'd be curious though how many, like, obviously we know and heard tons of people got those checks and tons of people spent the money ridiculously, but I would be curious how many people that legitimately needed the money, you know what I mean, and couldn't get access to it for whatever reason, right?
Oh,
Like, I'll be
absolutely.
completely honest, the trouble I'm having trying to access some government uh projects that I've paid into too. It's no different than there. It's a social system. You pay into these things, right? And so why I'm having such difficulty trying to receive funds from something that I paid into since I was a child, I'm flabbergasted by it, and like, uh, again, I'm thankful that I haven't needed the money right now, but the problem is like a lot of people would say you're entitled to it when you pay for these things and then all of a sudden it goes wrong. It's almost like an insurance, and so you paid into it, you should be getting it when you need it. And so I don't know. We'll see how it all plays out. But like I said, people on the other side of the fence, like specifically here in Canada, I don't know about the U.S. or England, right? That are having and I again, it was a free for all at the beginning. I heard people get double bonus checks, unemployment, this and that, and then
Mhm.
they said, if I'm not mistaken, they just said, "Oh, whatever. We don't even expect anybody to pay it back." Like I don't even know how it's gonna work for taxes for some people. Like yeah, they spent ridiculous amounts of money, and then all of a sudden, a whole bunch of things change, and now people are needing it, and they're like, "Oh no, 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 no."
That's the thing. It was probably done with the best of intentions. You know, they said, right, shit, people are out of work, they have families to support. We need to give them some sort of income to make sure that people are okay. But
Mhm.
probably didn't think through the process for, you know, every single
Yeah,
category,
I think it
which
happened
Oh,
so
in real
fast.
terms they
Also,
couldn't
they
have
had to
done.
make quick decisions, right? And they
They
don't
did,
have
but then they
necessarily the
kept
time. But yeah, they
they
did
made a
keep it up for
stupid
a long
decision
time. It
and
was
then they kept that
months and
stupid
months.
decision for a very long time. And that's
yeah,
where I
but
think, you know, your political influences come into play and, you
Hmm.
know, persuasion and things like that.
that's what I was gonna say. I would be curious to know. Like, obviously, I watched a little bit of what's going on with Canada, and I did see like during that time they're handing out money. They gave out money to not even Canadian businesses, like, and people not even in Canada. So you know what I mean? Like, and this is in legislation that they're saying this. So I'm not sure. Like, this is a rumor, right? If it's in the legislature or whatever,
This
but
is where your cynicism comes in a little bit because you've got no idea why that decision was made at all. And
no,
then,
no,
you
of
know, you're
course not,
probably
of
never
course
going to
not.
be privy to that information and it could have been completely justified. Or it could have been someone stealing money from your government. But you will never know, ever.
Well, and that's what I mean. But I feel like even people that should know are having problems getting information, right? Like I've paid a little bit of attention to what's going on in the Canadian government and all these things, and I know they were having a massive, massive problem getting papers out of the Winnipeg lab and what happened there. Like that's a big old
Have
tops
you
and what they shipped over to China. That's another thing that they're keeping hush hush and
have
don't
you
want.
ever seen a debate or any kind of conversation? Conversation is such a ridiculous term. In like the House of Commons when all of our MPs and shit get together. You seen that big ass green and brown room where they're all on the benches on either side?
So not the UK one specific. I don't think I've seen the UK one specifically, but I've seen like Canada's one, and that's what it like. It's a joke half the time. It's
I mean,
political
Same
is
here.
if
what
you'd
it is.
seen the UK one, you'd know about it because it is a free for all, and about the only thing they don't do is hit each other. Like you can have the prime minister literally standing there saying, "I'm going to do X, Y, and Z," and the opposition party will just be shouting at him, over him. It's it's a clusterfuck. So
See,
I
and
think
I'm
there
not
needs to be some
surprised.
level of management of expectations here about when we talk about the government, when we talk about health organizations, when we talk about how people have addressed, you know, the pandemic as a whole. We like to believe that these people are the big, powerful government, this well-oiled machine that, you know, can get stuff done. But the reality is they are just a bunch of group of guys, admittedly specialized in their profession, but they are just a bunch of people arguing and, you know, it's not as well oiled
Imagine
as you think.
us three trying to, and not even just us three, people you know, right? Just a big group of people you know in a room trying to pass laws.
But that's
But
exactly what it is.
yeah,
So people
right?
that might have
So,
taken a different specialist at university,
well, and
that's your
that
friend up there making decisions with
hmm
Trudeau or whoever the hell it is.
I think a lot of people forget that, right? Like all these people are people at the end of the day. They're
I think
nobody
you forget
special,
that
right?
a lot of times.
I
It's
yeah.
not all people. I think you forget that a lot of times. And
I think a lot
especially
of the
in
time,
split decisions that need to be made for the betterment of your society in times of crisis, right? You look at it and you can ridicule a lot, and not just you, anyone, right? I mean, I've been guilty of it plenty of times too, of ridiculing the decisions being made and the people making them. But at the same time, I'm like, well, I don't know what I would do in that situation, right? Or I
to be
can
perfectly
take
honest,
3 months to think about it or a year to think about it and look back, oh, you should have done that. But in the moment, would I have made that decision in the timely manner it needed to be made?
I actually agree with Canada for a lot of the stuff that he says about how poorly governments and health officials have handled the situation. It has been done very, very badly. Where we disagree mostly is on the motive for that and whether it was intentional or not. But the reality is they had to do something. Whether it's financially, medically, or any kind of socioeconomic impact of a worldwide pandemic, they had to do something because doing nothing is not an acceptable option. So
Look,
they
we've
did
circled
something.
back to this on vaping too. Me and you,
Right.
Anthony, have talked about this a lot in detail on vaping, right? About the government either endorsing it or turning a blind eye to it, right? At some point, they have to be scared, right? It's not something that is a national health crisis right now. Tons of people aren't dying, so they're not forced to make a decision right now on vaping, not smoking, not smoking. Your government's not telling you smoking is good. You can't tell me they are. They're not saying you should go smoke. But they're also not saying you should go
No, but
vape
the
because
decision
they
making
don't
is
have those
massively
studies,
biased in favor
right?
of keeping
So
cigarettes
I'll
around.
tell you, within the
Financially.
Canadian documents, right, for the flavor ban, they literally said that people would go back to smoking and that was okay. That's literally written in the Canadian government documents. I should find that and post that because it's absolutely ridiculous.
That is
That's even written.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy.
You know what I mean? We are
Yeah.
going to increase smoking rates as a possibility, and that's okay. Like that's within the Canadian government regulations. Like that's insane. That's
Wasn't it that guy in
outrageous.
New York, the mayor or whatever the hell he is, went
Oh
on national
yeah, that
television
guy
and
too,
said,
Cuomo.
"Yeah, we know it's safer, but so what?" Like, that's just not okay.
And those are the reasons that I have such a hard time trusting, right, that they're doing it for good intentions, right? As much as I want to believe that there is good intentions and good people, and you know what, like to get the record straight, there's obviously good people there. You know what I mean? There's regular people like me and you just working a job trying to get by. I don't doubt that in my mind. But there is certain people, and again, from my experiences that I've had recently in dealing with the government and talking to people, right? The person that I was speaking to even said, like, I feel vastly different than what's happening, and I'm not allowed to make decisions that I was normally allowed to make. So unfortunately, I have certain things I have to follow. There's certain things I have to do, and it's all out of my hands, and I'm just doing my job.
Do you
And
know what
this
I think
person
is?
Yeah, I think.
doesn't
Go
feel
ahead,
good
David.
about it either, though.
I think that the fundamental problem, I don't have a better word than problem, is if you look at vaping in isolation, it will never be good for you. It will never be better for you than not vaping. I think a
Mhm.
lot of institutions and organizations will say, right, they'll look at it in isolation and say, right, we've got kids vaping, we've got adults vaping, we've got loads of people vaping. Is vaping good for you? Probably not. Therefore, you shouldn't do it. I think where places like the UK differ is because smoking and the related illnesses is so prevalent and it costs so much money. They've actually gone that step further to say, well, actually, there's a massive correlation that if we use this as a quit smoking tool, and in the long run, it's better. So we're not going to publicly condemn it. You'll never go to a GP and say, hey, have you tried vaping? Like if you don't smoke, they'll never say that.
Mhm.
But if you
No.
smoke, they will absolutely say this is a viable option.
And see, I wish that doctors would do that, and that's all I'm looking for, right? I don't think people that don't smoke or use should pick up vaping. I really don't. I don't think
Honestly,
there's
I think
any
they'll get
need
there.
to
I think
be
they will get there
dependent
eventually.
on a substance. I do too. Eventually, it's gonna come out, right? Like you can only hide the truth for so long. But
See, this is why do you have to be so emotive? Like you're
I think.
immediately you pissed me off by saying they're hiding the truth. What are they going to admit? It's not. It's
Look, I
when
not a
think.
you
conscious,
write
deceptive move.
Mhm.
specifically in a document that you know you're going to increase smoking, which you know is leading to death, right? Like I don't know. Again, the government wrote this word for word,
I think the
right?
main problem
And
is where do you draw the line in trying, or where do you put legislation in terms of trying to complete both goals? Because you don't want people to start vaping from nothing, right? Because you can't endorse it because you don't know what harmful factors there could be in 20, 30, 40 years, right? So you don't want
so
that to happen, but also you want people not to smoke and you want it to be a safer alternative. but you have to
Well, hold
Yeah,
pass
up.
but
The UK and
legislation.
Canada want people not to smoke. The Americans will light it for
Oh
you if you
no,
could. You know they'll
no,
make
I
money off
know.
you. Like,
I think that's where privatized healthcare is a huge negative here too, right? Everything,
is.
and especially in politics, people are just being bought off all the time, right? In different ways, different fashions.
but
It's almost just how
that's
I
a
see things
really
now. It is what it is.
yeah, but and that's a really interesting point because it's the same organizations in the US and obviously with Canada being so close to the US that are pushing the nonsense up here, right? It's Heart and Stroke, it's the Lung Association, and cancer, right?
Hmm.
So those are the three, and they're obviously tied to each other because of, you know what I mean, how close we are. So, when you have the three same organizations pushing the same nonsense, right? Again, I get what you're saying, and I agree. Obviously, you don't want to encourage that. But what they should have done is advertise it. It's your dad's or grandma's quit smoking tool. You know what I mean? It's a ugly fucking whatever. And kids don't mess with the quit smoking aids. You don't see kids fucking with nicotine patches or inhalers or any of those products, right? They're on the shelves. Kids can go buy them
I
here
think
in
big
Canada too.
companies have an easier time pushing that type of marketing than smaller companies, right? Everyone says support local businesses, but how many local businesses do you know that cater only to the elderly, right? Or people that have heart problems? Like it's minuscule compared to big organizations like, let's say, Altria, right? With Jules or whatever, any huge
No, but it's
organization,
going to be
tobacco
people like Canada
organization.
going out to the local store and buying one for his dad.
Yeah,
It's not
so
going to be his
you're
dad directly going into the store.
But see, that's the problem is small businesses can't make money just marketing like that. You want to market it as something that is appealing and fun, or not fun might be a different word than I want.
Yeah,
But
but
No,
like
you're right.
a pleasing
that's
looking.
again like Jewel, right, is a perfect example of that because I agree. Obviously, some of their advertising obviously got taken way out of proportion, and everybody heard about it. The UK, you know what I mean. Everybody around the world knows about Jewel, right?
Mhm.
If they had used a bunch of, you know, elderly people sitting down at a table as an advertisement, hey, I just quit smoking. It- a little
You
blurb.
can too.
Yeah, like again, you know what I mean? What a difference that would have made. Their product was still popular, it was still everywhere, right? But if they had done different images, different,
I don't think
I
they'd
think
be nearly as successful as they are if they would have only marketed it to such a niche group of people, though, right? I mean,
I do. I
obviously,
think their product.
simple math tells you the more people you market to, the more people you're going to sell it to, right?
Yes, of
So
course.
if there's a stigma around it that it's only for people not to be smoking, then that's great for that cause, right? But from a
But
selling standpoint, businesses aren't going to want to limit their sales that heavily, right? I mean, that's a
yeah,
big
because
jump
if you
to
turn up to your
say,
friends at like
yeah,
25 and you're using granddad's vaping device, that's
exactly,
not cool,
right?
and so it don't
And
sell.
people aren't going to
yeah, but
buy it. People
and
that
that to
need
me
it
is
are going
how
to
it
buy it more.
that's how it should be marketed though. In reality, and you know what?
Not for a private
Again,
business. You must be
It's easy
crazy.
to say that now, though, right? Not owning that business, but go tell all the people that are making money and their demographic is from 25 to 45 that they should completely
Right.
eliminate that entire section of their market and
If their
only
main
cater
goal
to
is
the
public
what
health, sure.
20%, if that, of elderly people that are trying to quit smoking.
yeah, but and I think again, I think that's why the UK is doing such a better job. When you start to, as much as I think that's the biggest problem with the elder demographic, right? When it comes to our uh, countries, right? They're told by the health it's bad. Vaping's bad. The kids better not vape. Do not do this. Do not, you know. So when
Yeah, they ain't
they
told
are
that here.
I
told
think it
that,
boils down to just covering your ass, right? Like, honestly, people just don't want to endorse something that they don't know. I mean, even if the financial aspect
All
wasn't there,
organizations would have neither.
right? They would just say, okay, well, smoking's already here. People are already smoking, right?
No,
But we don't want
like
more people to start vaping and then something really fall back on us. That would cripple them, right?
but this is where
Ruin.
policy and procedure just ignore reality completely. So, for example, when I was a kid in the playground, You got that other kid that comes in, they've stolen a pack of cigarettes from their dad, and they're like, "Hey, come, let's go out to the park and smoke." That's how I
Hmm.
started smoking. It's you're a kid, you're gonna do shit you're not supposed to
Yeah.
do. You're gonna do shit that's supposedly for adults only. It it attracts you, and I think that's the biggest problem for me with this whole vaping thing is because my younger brother, he was in high school, and his mom found a vape under his bed. And that's the exact same shit that would have happened 20 years ago to me, except my mom found a pack of smokes under my bed. Kids will experiment with this shit. Whether you advertise it or not, they'll see it, they'll want to try it, and as soon as it says 18 plus, they will immediately try it.
But
And
do
you
you
know,
not
people
see
like
the
us,
government or policymakers being more cautious now, seeing how that went, right? Seeing how they weren't regulating cigarettes, I mean, decades ago, right?
oh,
Whatever.
absolutely.
And then
I
now they're
completely
going to look at that
understand
and they're
why
going to
they
say,
do what they do.
okay, I'm not going to jump on this. We're not going to treat this the same way as cigarettes because that kind of backfired, right? A lot of people are dying.
Absolutely. And that,
So
that
then
status
now
quo
there's that
of we
problem.
don't want to let that get started because we'll have another problem on our hands on top of smoking. And I think that's where they get a lot of their policy lines from. But
Hmm.
we know, I say we as in the UK seems to be slightly more advanced, and us as vapors will have the general opinion that if they're going to do one, it's going to be one or the other. Not many people habitually smoke and vape. So I
Hmm.
don't
No.
think the fear should be there that you're going to have a bunch of people still smoking and a new bunch of people vaping on top of that. I think you're going to have that crossover as smokers quitting. But also, I don't know, they can't just leave it there. They have to take it the next step further and look at the correlation between the two groups. They have to look at the benefits of, harm reduction rather than what they're trying to do, which is no harm at all to anybody ever. And that's just not realistic.
Hmm.
Yeah, and I do
No, I agree.
completely agree with that, right? And I think, and obviously with vaping, right, and nicotine though, like why are people? What about nicotine gets people so interested? Why do so many youth end up trying it and enjoying it? Right?
This is where we
What?
can fight as well, and
I think it's just
Pardon?
not meant
over
for you, so you want it, right? I
this is
mean,
where me and
you.
you are going to fight again over nicotine, and
Well, yeah, but it can go with any substance, right? And it's no different. Again, I remember being in high school. Oh, yo, try this drink, and it's alcohol, and all of a sudden you're having a grand old time until you're puking, right? And so
Mhm.
again, it's adult taboos, whatever it may be, right? But when it comes to the whole vaping, tobacco, whatever, like what about this is making people one feel good and continue to do it, right? And like, why is so many people doing it? You know what I mean? Even though, like, especially when it comes to smoking, when people know it's bad, they know it's gonna kill you, right? The majority of smokers are like, yeah, I want to quit, but I can't, I won't, I'm not willing, right? I enjoy it. I love smoking, right? Like you hear whatever excuse it may be, but like how do you get smokers the better knowledge, and like how do we get more information about nicotine in general, you know what I mean?
This
And
may
like
be an
I
unpopular opinion, but I think the generation it's a generational thing. I think people are just screwed until they phase out and the new generation comes up with just vaping, right?
there
Cigarettes
is definitely an
slowly
element
die
of that.
out and then over time. I think time is the only thing. I think trying to focus so much on people that are currently smoking, it's just not working, right? I mean, as terrible as it sounds, you can't necessarily forget about them,
The thing is,
but
over
you just
here it
have to
is.
roll with the punches almost, right?
Over here we have a pretty decent success rate. If people want to quit, like electronic cigarettes help a lot. And it's one of those things that if they just see someone walking down the road with a mech or a 120-watt smock just blowing clouds up the street, getting in everyone's way, they immediately form a negative
Mm,
image
that
of it.
stigma,
It's
yeah.
disgusting. And you'll pass that woman in the street who's too bougie for her own good, and you'll walk past vaping and she'll start doing that over dramatic cough. That oh, do you
Mm,
mind?
yeah, yeah.
When they've got no idea, they didn't even feel it. The only thing they get is a slight hint of strawberry cupcake on the air. It doesn't affect their lungs in the slightest. But it's because they don't have that information. But the difference is when you get people of any generation come into the store looking for the information because they want to quit, they listen to the speech. So I worked in a vape shop for a couple of years as a weekend job, and I was talking to these people about, what they want from vaping, why they want to quit, how they want to quit, and once they hear the information, the ingredients, the studies that the NHS have done, and the advice from Public Health England, and you know, just a decent sales pitch, they're completely sold, and that changes their
How do you
perspective on it
market it to people
100%.
that aren't interested in it or don't have that? How do you get their interest though? That I guess I mean I
If
agree with what you're saying. Like it is
if you have
important
a
that people that want
60-year-old
to
40
have that accessibility, but how do
if
you
you have a
market it,
60
right?
year old 40 a day smoker who wants to smoke, loves to smoke, and has said they will smoke all the way into their coffin, he ain't changing his mind. You know,
And see,
if they
that's my
invest,
point. But see, I've helped people come off of almost that situation, right? Like 2 packs a day smoking. I've helped people come from that to just vaping, or even vaping is zero, right? Coming off
oh, I'm not
nicotine
saying it's
completely.
impossible. I'm
So that's the
saying the
point
ones
of
that
like,
in their
how do
mind have
you?
made up.
But how do you market it to new people, right?
Yeah,
If
that
it
is
was
a good
me,
question.
I'd get a lot more. Like when I worked in the shop, I was constantly pressing the owner to say, look, just take a handful of disposables, go put a stall in the middle of the crowded area, and just talk to people. Like literally
Yeah,
say, hey, can I
So
help
just
you with
starting
this?
a
Or
conversation, yeah.
yeah, and we
But how do you
actually
do
did
that on
that.
a grand scale?
I mean,
Or how do you do
haven't
that, I
had
guess, as a
these like that.
policy, right? Like, how do you implement a policy that will lead to more people having that knowledge?
Well,
I
this
guess
is
it's
where
a
it
lot
gets
different
difficult.
if your government is, I don't want to say endorsing, but promoting it as an
What they
alternative,
do
right?
in
But here,
hospitals, we have
like,
posters
we
that
have no
say
shot of
this.
that, right? Not really. I mean, you'll have some doctors, like family
No, you don't.
doctors or whatever, that'll tell you, yeah, some vaping's illegal.
Because
They're
of the
like
state of
personal
your
opinion,
healthcare,
but it's not
because of the
like
state of
that.
your healthcare and the amount of money involved in tax from tobacco, you are never getting
Hmm.
it out.
And that's
yeah,
what
In
I
a matter
mean.
of
And see,
months.
I don't necessarily, I'm not really speaking broadly or like worldwide. I'm just speaking from what I've seen in the States, obviously, is I think it's just waiting. Like, you wait out until vaping is the new meta, right? And then they can't
I'm not
ignore
even
it
sure it
then.
will
It's
be
just over
until
time.
all your states balance their books without that tax income. Because what, like a huge proportion of those states have taken out loans against future earnings.
Mm-hmm.
That's where that
Yeah.
money comes from. They've taken out loans against tobacco sales that are yet to be made. So if they
yeah, but
ban
see,
tobacco sales now, they'd have a huge deficit.
and that's why, like, I was
On top
curious
of their
how
already
much.
huge deficit.
Yeah,
Well,
but
yeah.
that's why I was curious how much a pack of cigarettes is taxed and going towards programs like the NHS. So, if I'm not mistaken, Canada it is raking in an extra like $4 billion that off of tobacco tax that they're not even spending on helping smokers quit. Like, there's an
Yeah,
extra
it's
four
going to be
billion
nothing
dollars.
compared to the cost of care.
Yeah, but including the cost of care. Like, if I'm not mistaken, the total is like 7 billion. 3 billion goes to like healthcare and covers that, and then the other four
Yeah,
billion goes to whatever. I
but
don't.
the point of the smoke reduction in England is that we wouldn't need the 3 billion if people weren't coming in with cancer and pneumonia from smoking.
And Canada is no different though, right? If we could reduce that even more,
Yeah, but
you
you're
know what
too
I
close
mean?
to the
Like,
states. You're way too close.
oh,
That
I
is
do think
true,
Decisions
that.
made
yeah.
by the CDC and the FDA impact your policy way more than it should for an
Mm-hmm.
independent nation.
Yeah, but and that's the yeah, but it's funny. Canada relies on those two, the CDC, the FDA, and the WHO for all uh, the majority of basically all of what happens, right? It's
Yes, to your
all.
point.
I think that's another point of like financials or finances and politics that probably plays a smaller factor in the States, right? Is Canada. So I think while it doesn't go both ways massively, it definitely, I would think Canada is much more influenced by the States, right? But I think, let's say your
Certainly has
government
perceived by
starts,
us.
yeah, your government starts promoting vaping and whatnot. I think that would trickle down more. So I could
Yeah,
see
well,
big
look at
tocco,
cannabis.
pharma. Well, I
Cannabis.
mean, where all the money is here, right? They don't want
Yeah,
to
but
lose that. So I'm
cannabis.
sure they influence your politicians and legislature just as much as our own. Maybe not just as
Cannabis.
much, but enough, right?
Yeah, cannabis. That's so like we legalize cannabis, and now obviously the U.S. has had a mad push, big
Mm-hmm.
push to try and legalize, right? And obviously there's lots of states legalizing, but are they going to do it federally? And again, there was a big push for a while. it's kind of been quiet that I've heard. Like I haven't heard anything or seen too much. I'm sure on the back end people are fighting still, but
I think the biggest thing from you influencing us more, or your country influencing my country more, is your tax rate. To be honest, I think if your taxes, like everyone's, there's that stigma of Canadians pay crazy taxes, right? We don't want universal health care because they have it, and their taxes are ridiculous. Blah blah blah. All
Yeah,
this,
but
right?
you know who says that? Healthy Americans. If you start talking to the
That is
ones that are
true. Yeah.
paying for their prescriptions and they've paid 20
Hmm.
grand to ride in an ambulance, I bet they
No,
fucking
I
want
agree. Yeah.
state funded healthcare. And that's the
I agree
problem
with
with a lot of stuff over there. Like I said, here in England, we have this understanding and this acceptance that taxes, whilst they're a pain in the ass and they can be high, we know that there are people out there that need those services. And begrudgingly or not, we pay that tax, A, because we have to, but B, because there's that part of the social system that says we need to look after the people that need looking after, right?
Have you
In
had
the
somewhat of
States,
universal health care your whole life?
huh?
Have you had some form of universal health care in the UK your whole life? Or
Yes.
was it implemented? So you've had it since you can remember, obviously.
Yeah.
So your
yeah, you're
taxes have
born with it.
been higher.
You're
Yeah, yeah.
born. You're
But I'm
born with
saying, I
that
think
health card.
the problem here. What about you? Same with you. You've had some sort of universal health care since you can remember.
Yeah, your health card number. As soon as you're born, you get a health card, and that's
So
your
I think that's
card.
a big problem here is the transition. People are used to not having it and they are used to paying this tax rate. So if all of a sudden you say, okay, we're going to release universal health care, that's great, right? I don't think anyone would say we want lesser health care, right? I think the
You know what
problem
it
comes
is?
when you start charging them for it and they're like, oh, blah, 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 we've been doing fine without this. I think that's the biggest thing is, oh, we've been living without it, so we can keep living without it.
But you know what it is? It's about limiting the biggest highs and the lowest lows. So here, for example, the tax may go up, it may go down, but ultimately everybody's cared for. And we never have those horror stories about somebody that gets sick and can't afford to live.
No, I
That's
agree,
a
but I
very
don't
real
think
thing in the States.
Americans as
So
a whole can step over that speed
no,
bump,
because they don't
right?
give a shit. They don't
Yeah,
wanna
they care
they don't
more
wanna
about the
sacrifice.
individual money, and like they're too
Absolutely.
accustomed to
And
paying
it
this
is a
amount.
little bit more difficult given the size of the country and obviously the population and stuff like that. It
Hmm.
obviously gets infinitely more difficult to not only implement but to sell to your nationals to say, hey, look, we think this is a good idea, because half of them will disagree based on the
Yeah,
political party
and
they vote, and the
yeah,
other half will
exactly. Back to
disagree
the
just because they don't
political
want to lose the money.
problems. I mean, it doesn't even
But
matter, right? Anything they suggest, the other side will hate. Oh, 9 times out of 10.
yeah, and that's just fucking stupid. But that's not something you're going to fix either.
Hmm.
But it's that state of mind where it's socially acceptable for you to see your neighbor, like, I don't know, they could bust their back in the driveway slipping down some snow, be paralyzed, and have to pay God knows how much for wheelchairs and
Oh, they'll be in debt
physiotherapy,
for the
and
rest of their life.
they can't even afford to do it.
Mm.
There's people on a daily basis that will say, I've had this real bad pain in my gut for like 2 weeks. That could be anything from bad chicken to appendicitis to, you know, bowel cancer. But they're not going to go to the doctor because it costs money.
Yeah.
Now,
Hmm.
all of a sudden, on those rare occasions where it is something horrendous, you're going to read that story. And we're going to see that story of the nation that doesn't give a shit about the guy who was on disability who died because he couldn't afford to go to the GP. And that is where we get our really, really, really cynical view of your healthcare system.
Oh, I'm
Because
there
no one
with
gives a shit.
you. Yeah. No, I agree completely. I think, I don't know. I just don't see a way of implementing any type of change.
No, I mean,
At least not
that's
anywhere in my lifetime, right?
that is
Honestly.
the other problem on every major issue where you guys are divided and have such trouble.
Hmm.
You're in it now. You're
Yeah,
too
because
far
like I
gone.
said before, I think the parties in general are roughly 50-50 split, right? It may go up or down, a percent, whatever, right? But when it comes up to votes, most everything is neck and neck, right? So whenever you put up something like that, I mean, it's just not going to pass. They can't
No, but
come
it's not.
to
So,
enough of an
but
agreement.
that's why you're always divided and you're always fighting with someone. Whether it's gun control laws, abortion laws, vaping,
Yeah,
national
but
health care, you're fucked.
Hmm.
Just across the board. And these are major issues. These are not
yeah, but
like,
the one thing I will say about the U.S. is they do have some of the best healthcare in the world if you can afford it,
Yeah, if you're
right?
rich.
Like if
I mean, the
people are
healthcare
going for
I could
surgeries
receive
and
I'm
if
pretty
stuff
I
sure
like
were
that
that.
applies
right?
to a lot of countries. If you're rich, you're good on healthcare.
I saw not a study. I
Yeah,
saw
I guess
some
that's probably
information not
true.
too long ago that was comparing doctors in the UK, like average salary of doctors in the UK to doctors in America. And doctors here make way more money, right? There are people that
You
travel
can make
here
money off sick
to
people.
become a doctor, and exactly that's the problem, though, right? Like they start paying them more. What doctors are going to take pay cuts? There's so many factors. So I don't know. The healthcare industry in general would take such a hit financially that even the people that would want it would be against it because now they're paying higher taxes and they have less money in their whatever, like their paychecks are less, right? They're taking pay cuts.
Well, and you know what though? Again, when it comes to stuff like that, like I somewhat see that point. Where's this extra $4 billion going? What are they doing with it?
Military
Again,
spending.
I'm glad. I am glad that everybody is taken care of, and you know what I mean. Like for the majority, people can get what they need. I do think it's messed up paying $200 or $100 for an asthma inhaler as an asthmatic, right? It does suck, right?
Mhm.
And diabetes, if I'm not mistaken, is another one. Like I don't know why they don't get like needles and stuff like that. Women's products, why they don't get those. I'm not, again, there's a whole list of things, right,
Well,
that end
diabetes
up.
is focused around the insulin, isn't it? But the problem is those insulin recipes are trademarked by like 5 massive
Mhm.
corporations.
Yeah, but and
Yep.
then the other thing too though is then they're paying for the pin prick and all those things and all the test readers to make sure, like there's a whole, you know what I mean, expense
I've
with
had two
that
of those tests
involved.
for free, just for the record.
Pardon?
I've had two of those tests already for free.
All right, guys, we're moving to the UK. This is the UK podcast, babbling
See,
inside
this is the
borders
thing.
in the
Whenever we
UK.
talk, whenever we talk about this kind of stuff, particularly with people from America, I'm like, look, dude, just move here. It's easier. And then half of them are like, no, I want my guns and I want my freedom. Like I live under some kind of
Woo!
dictatorship. But that's
Yeah,
that's
I
the
don't.
reality is that's where your money's going, and that's what it boils down to. Like, no, fuck that. This is America. We can kick your ass. We got nukes. It's like, yeah, those nukes cost you your healthcare. Enjoy it. Like,
Right. We
I
won't
don't know,
go
man.
into government spending because I hate it so much, and I just don't feel like destroying my brain tonight thinking about that much. That
We ain't got time for that.
600 billion army.
So you say you're not going to go
I
into it and then
just,
quote a number? Is that
I
you
just
just
hate
trying to
it.
poke
No, I
Canada
hate
with
it. No, I hate it so much. But I would say, actually, this is where we'd probably want to wrap up the YouTube and Spotify portion.
Yeah, call that quits, and then we
Yep.
over to Twitch. And again, for
Yep.
all those listening, if you want to join us on Twitch with our lovely guest, mind you, I guess you missed out if you're on YouTube or Spotify listening. You're too late.
We'll have more guests.
But
We might have this guest back. I don't know. Let's figure it out, right?
yeah, but and then they can still chat, right? Again,
Mm-hmm.
Twitch next week. You want to chat? Voice your opinions and concerns over the nonsense.
Oh yeah, we're about to dive into that. We've had a lot of chat going.
Well,
this
that's
stream,
good.
so we're
That's
about to
good.
dive into that. But definitely check us out here, twitch.tv/babbling over borders every Thursday.
David, thank you.
No, it's a
I
pleasure.
appreciate
Thank
it.
you for having me.
It
It's
was
always a pleasure to
awesome.
talk to you guys.